Someone made this comment to me as I recapped the game online elsewhere. We made it. A 15-point win is wholly unsatisfying. It was. But it's important that the Magic still did this. The grit that's always going to be there today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is October 26, 2024. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, the important lesson the Orlando Magic learned from their gritty, uneven, odd win over the Brooklyn Nets. Even against the Nets, what the Magic proved to themselves that they need to show at this early stage of the season. We're going to get to that coming up here in just a moment. First, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. If you want to have a little bit more Locked On Magic in your life, we're happy to introduce the Locked On Magic Daily Newsletter. It's the one-stop for the ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com. And start your day with the all-new free Locked On Magic newsletter. The Orlando Magic are 2-0. That's ultimately what matters. Ultimately, they won the game and pushed themselves through. Friday's game against the Brooklyn Nets, a 116-101 win, by the way, was not Wednesday's win over the Miami Heat. Was not the opponent, was not the stakes. It was a completely different game. And while we've been buzzing here for the last 2 days about what the Magic looked like and all the potential the Magic had, Friday's game was almost the team coming back down to earth. It was almost the team getting a little dose of reality. That no, this is not going to be easy. No, the team still needs time to get together and figure itself out. That no, this Magic team still has to reestablish its identity. The Brooklyn Nets did not go away. They were not going away. They were not, they are a team that's plucky, that is trying hard, really hard, to overcome their talent deficits, and is going to try and drag you into the mud. That's what the Magic like to do, by the way. They like to drag teams into the mud. The Magic had to deal with a team that was not afraid to push back. Sorry, Miami. They had to deal with a team that was trying to get under their skin, frustrate them. Because that's the only way the Nets are going to win. They got to be crafty. They got to be smart. They got to try and do something a little bit different. The Magic had to find themselves in Friday's game in a way that was so different from Wednesday, but not so different from Wednesday, not completely different than who they had to show and who they had to be in Wednesday's game against the Miami Heat. The Magic know who they are. Let's make that clear. They know what's going to ultimately lead to their victory, to their success. They know what success looks like for this team. They do. They know it all starts with their defense. And it's one thing to say that. It's one thing to believe that, to know that. It's another thing to do it. It's another thing, more importantly, to do it when frustration mounts on offense. Look, it is easy to be good at defense when the shots are going down. It is easy to be good on defense when you have the motivation and the impetus to play. But this has been the driving force, the driving question for this Magic team if they want to be where they want to be. is, can you do it on that random Tuesday in January? Can you do it against a team at the bottom of the standings and play with the same intensity and fire? Can you do it when the shots aren't going down? When the other team is putting up such significant resistance? Can you find a way? That's what the Magic did last year, for the most part. The Magic's defense was always there. And this is an important point to make because this is the reality of the league too. You have to rebuild your defense every year. You don't really know what you have and who you are until you're out on the floor again. And so Friday's game was a lesson in frustration. Friday's game was a Magic team who offensively was still shooting the ball really well, was moving the ball really well, but not getting the kind of bread and butter plays and bread and butter actions that this team leans on. Brooklyn was selling out hard to double Paolo in the post, forcing him to make decisions, forcing him to pass over double teams and triple teams, and daring the Magic to make shots that they weren't making as much this time around. It dared the Magic to be locked in defensively when those shots weren't going down, when the officials were not consistent. Let's put it that way. A team that kind of broke its composure in a lot of ways. When even Jamal Mosley is picking up technical fouls because he's unhappy with the foul distribution, with how he's got to protect his players, to put it frankly. And through it all, the Magic give up 101 points. Through it all, the Magic give up a 102 defensive rating. Through it all, even when their defense isn't necessarily at its best, it's still good. And now the Magic know this is something they can count on. This is something that exists outside of their offense, outside of perfection. Yes, this, as Franz Wagner put it, they can play better. They will play better. As Franz Wagner put it, this was not a good game for the Orlando Magic. They did not do the things that they need to do, and that includes on defense. Even though the team played incredible defense throughout the game. This is still a team that is going to get better. We are not at the finished product. As good as Wednesday night looked, we are not at the finished product yet. But what the Magic had to learn, what the Magic had to see, what the Magic had to feel on Friday was that they could get pushed around, that they could get knocked down, that they could get dragged down and held and all that. And their defense is still going to do the job. That this team is forming its identity still. And now knows who it is, knows what matters, and knows what's key to victory. Okay, we're 2 games into the season. Let's not blow anything out of proportion. There's still a lot of work for this team to get on the same page, to be at the level they'll need to be in for March and April. We know that. But a game like this shows that the Magic's grit will always be there. That defensive toughness isn't going anywhere and isn't something that's easily abandoned because a few shots didn't go down. There is still work to do, very clearly. But the Magic's defense looks like it's going to live up to the billing, because it stood tall when it got knocked and pushed around on Friday by the Nets. And the Nets deserve a lot of credit. We'll talk more about them in a bit. The Nets deserve a lot of credit for the way they fought in this game. The Magic, though, clearly in control and clearly building towards something bigger. A big reason they're building towards something bigger is Franz Wagner. How Franz Wagner appears to have his 3-point shot back. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. You love daily fantasy. I love daily fantasy. And the best way to play daily fantasy sports this weekend, whether you're getting into the NBA, college football, NFL, whatever, is with Prize Picks. With Prize Picks, you just have to pick more or less on player stats and see the winnings come in. Put together a group of 2 to 6 of these picks and have a chance to win big prizes. In fact, you can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. Join more than 10 million users and sign up today. Prize Picks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your picks hit, you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. And again, you're not playing against the big groups, the sharks, or anything like that. You're playing against the numbers only. That makes this the best daily fantasy sports game, in my opinion. It's the daily fantasy sports game that I play. With Prize Picks, you have control. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup just using the code LOCKEDONNBA on the Prize Picks app. Prize Picks, run your game. This was a good game. I want to just repeat this part. The Magic won. It feels like they won. This isn't like we snuck it out by the skin of our teeth. It's like, no. The way the way this game worked on Friday, the Magic were in control. And we were waiting all game for the team to make that one shot that would spark a crazy run. That would spark a big run, put them up by 20, 21, and then exhale. That run never really came. Orlando got up by like 11 or 12, and then Brooklyn would come back, bring it back down to or tie the game or whatever. It was just that kind of seesaw battle, but the Magic always felt in control. And that's despite Paolo struggling. We'll talk about him in our last segment here. But a big reason why the Magic are able to do this is because they do have 2 all-star level players. They do have someone who can step up and find his way to score and find his way to impact the game. And while Paolo struggled, and struggle is a relative term, but he struggled, Franz Wagner continued to thrive. Another big game for Franz after a really strong second half on Wednesday in Miami. 29 points, 10 for 19 shooting, 6 for 6 from the foul line, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, did have 3 turnovers. That's the only part that we can be complaining about. And ultimately a team high plus 16, as Franz is often the case, playing with that bench unit, anchoring that bench unit, displaying that depth. Franz Wagner is a big piece of the Magic, zooming ahead of teams in the third and fourth quarters. You'll notice the stat I didn't say there, though. You notice the thing I didn't say, because while Franz is great at getting to the basket, is great at getting to the foul line, is great at finishing those floaters and shots around the rim, the thing that everybody worried about in the offseason, the thing that everybody was concerned about, and could be the difference between Franz being really a very good player and an all-star, is his three-point shooting. And like this team now, seeing a sudden three-point revival, only 30 attempts today. It was a very low attempt day. Franz Wagner is finding his mark from beyond the arc. That rhymed. For the second straight game, Franz Wagner finished 3 for 6. That makes him 6 for 12 for the year. And while I don't think any of us are expecting him to shoot 50% from 3 for the entire season, considering he shot 28% from 3 last year, or 29% from 3 last year, considering all the hand-wringing and frustration and struggle over his suddenly disappearing three-point shot, considering the rumors that Franz had reworked his form, considering how much he struggled from the outside in the preseason, Franz Wagner is suddenly a very reliable three-point shooter. And unlocking that three-point shot, even getting him back to league average, 33, 34, 35%, would do wonders to opening up the rest of his game. So the fact that Franz Wagner has started the regular season 6 for 12 with a form that looks much improved, that's gaining some confidence, that speaks to a lot. That speaks to who Franz can be and what the Magic can expect from their second star, from this player. Franz is taking on a bigger leadership role, like he is. And you could sense that after the game when he was first, he was the one to say, we weren't good enough today. We know what our standard is. We know we have to be better. And look, I'm not going to sit here to say the Magic's defense was bad. I will push back on that a little bit, but I do agree there were moments where the defense slipped a little bit, and just a little bit. And a game like this, that meant a lot. They couldn't quite put the nets away. And that's where Franz is head at. He's not thinking about himself. But undoubtedly, through 2 games, we are seeing Franz at his peak, at what Franz Wagner can look like when he's making jumpers. He took a mid-range jumper too. I hope y'all saw that in the first half and made it. Right now, we're kind of in the confidence building stage again with Franz. To see him make those shots, to see him play that way is a major statement. Is a major bonus for this group. And if Franz's 3-point shot is back, if this trend continues, then obviously it unlocks a lot of doors for the Magic. Obviously, it unlocks a lot of things for this team. And that is a huge, if we're talking about the Magic getting home court advantage in the playoffs, that is a must-have. That is a must-do for this team. But of course, we're just 2 games into this thing. We will be monitoring whether Franz's shot is back. It doesn't, I tried to ask it before you shuttled off because they had to get on a plane to Memphis. But it does feel like it's still a little early to ask, like, hey, does this feel real? What are we looking at here? But the fact that he's been consistent through 2 games suggests his shot is, if not back, on its way back. Certainly a lot more reliable than it was last year. And like the whole team, which we talked about yesterday, taking more threes, making more threes, unlocks so much more. Because again, like, I hate to say it like this, like, this game did not feel like a good game necessarily on either end. It did not feel like a complete effort. It did not feel like the Magic playing Magic basketball for long stretches. And yet, Orlando gives up only 101 points. And yet, Orlando scores 116. They had a 118 offensive rating, a 102 defensive rating. Statistically, this looks like a very clean, very professional, very comfortable win. Those of us who watched it know it was not, know that it was a struggle, know that, the Magic really had to fight and finally had that breakthrough in the 3rd and 4th quarters with Franz on the floor, of course, to pull away and win this game. And that the Magic were able to try and hold guys out and try to give guys some rest before they're back-to-back on Saturday in Memphis. This game was not as easy as the box score looks. So if you're box score watching, you missed a lot. But it's also a relief to know that the Magic can win like that. And it's a relief to know that if Paolo doesn't have it going on, Franz can get it going. They can't guard them both. Most teams don't have the personnel to guard both because it's hard to have 2 6'10" players with their dribbling, their driving, all that. If Franz's 3-point shot is back, which it certainly looks like it is, then the Magic become that much more difficult to defend. And maybe these offensive games we've seen through the last 2 games, maybe that's who this team is. Again, if there's a theme for this episode, let's lay out the theme of this episode. Early in the season, you're forming your identity. You think you know what it is. If you have a lot of carryover, you understand what you have to do, but you have to rebuild it every year. You have to do the work You can't just assume it exists. And so the Magic on Friday had to work to establish their identity and establish who they are. Because it's not about what you do when everything's working. It's not about what you do when it feels easy. It's about what you do when it's hard. And we'll talk about Paolo here when we go through the box score in a bit. But Franz found a way to make things work when it was hard. The Magic's defense found a way to make it work when it was hard. And that is extremely encouraging for this Magic team moving forward. We'll go through the final box score, talk a little bit about Paolo Banchero's game, especially. We'll do that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of the Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Hey, football fans, you can keep the season going with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. FanDuel has so many great offers to get you through this crazy good sports weekend, including the Magic as 1.5-point favorites on the road against the Memphis Grizzlies. Not a place where the Magic have won very often. 1.5-point favorites at Memphis. If you still want to do season-long stuff, they have the Magic at over under 47.5 wins. That's looking pretty good right now. And so much more. There's a lot of great stuff on FanDuel basketball-wise. Or if you want to get into football this weekend, you can find UCF against BYU. UCF still 2.5-point favorites over number 11 BYU. 2.5-point favorites for homecoming, for the big homecoming game this weekend. Or if you want to get to the NFL, you can find the Dolphins 4.5-point favorites over the Cardinals, or the Jaguars 3.5-point dogs at home to the Green Bay Packers. They have so many great offers, so much more than just games, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Let's go through the final box scores. The Orlando Magic defeat the Brooklyn Nets 116-101. Obviously, this is a star-driven league, and there is a lot of attention, and rightfully so, on Paolo Banchero, especially after his 33-point effort against the Miami Heat on Wednesday. And while Franz Wagner thrived, 29 points, 10 for 19 shooting, 3 for 6 from 3, 6 for 6 from the foul line, Paolo legitimately struggled. And Brooklyn, I thought, did a very good job, like a very good job, of making sure Paolo felt and saw multiple bodies. And this is something Miami did a really poor job of. Miami trusted Bam Adebayo to defend him one-on-one. They tried to wall him up in transition. And Paolo, whenever he could get a matchup that he liked, essentially not Bam Adebayo, he attacked it, he got downhill. Because Brooklyn played small, I think the Magic got sucked into it a little bit. And they really tried hard to work Paolo into the post and try and post him up against smaller players, whether it's Dorian Finney-Smith, whether they could get a switch on to like Dennis Schroeder. And Brooklyn felt very ready for it, where they were just straight doubling and tripling him to say, okay, get the ball out of his hands and we'll scramble and figure it out from there. To Paolo's credit, he still made an impact in the game. 9 assists, including 5 in the first quarter. Really did a good job moving the ball. And when he moved the ball, when he absorbed that pressure and found open players and open teammates, that's when this team was really successful. Frankly, I would argue a lot of Paolo's struggles were, yes, Paolo being a little frustrated and trying to find that shot and find that range. He was 4 for 12 from the floor. This is not a strong shooting game. Settled for some jumpers, couldn't finish around the basket, struggled to just break into the interior. The Magic only scored 44 points in the paint. It's not a great game for points in the paint this game. Brooklyn did a good job walling him and keeping him from getting to spots that he's comfortable with. But the Magic kind of left him on an island. A lot of ISOs, a lot of empty side sets, a lot of working the low post rather than trying to create opportunities for him in other ways. When the post-up stuff wasn't working, I'd like to see the Magic try different things to get him going. And they did that a little bit in the third quarter. They started bringing him to the top of the key, having him run pick and rolls, having him like moving around a little bit more, still kind of ISO heavy. This would have been the game that I would love to see him be the roll man in pick and rolls. To just be a screen setter, dive to the basket, just find ways to get him the ball in motion. That way the defense can't be set and he can make quicker decisions. I felt like the way Brooklyn was defending him, Paolo was just thinking too much. He wasn't reacting to what he saw. He wasn't kind of playing off of his teammates. He was reacting. He was trying to figure out the defense and just never quite looked comfortable with it, to be perfectly honest. Just never quite looked right. But the Magic were able to survive. Paolo was still able to make an impact. I want to make that really clear. 15.6 rebounds, 9 assists, no turnovers again. Paolo's trying to do the right things, and I think that's really important to remember. And so I think this is just going to be the tension of a season, is understanding like what a good shot is for him, when to impose himself. This is no good stuff. This is fine stuff. This is supposed to be the tension, where he's just still learning what the right thing to do is now that he knows he can play at this pace and figure things out. So, just a game. A good learning game for Paolo. He'll get better because of this. And, I think he'll have a better understanding of how to play against a defense like the one Brooklyn was throwing at him. The Magic got some great efforts elsewhere, though. Mo Wagner off the bench, 18 points. Looked like Mo Wagner from last year, just finishing around the basket, working pick and rolls, finding seams, just getting into spots and finishing. That's just very quintessential Mo Wagner stuff. I want to shout out Wendell Carter. 8 points, 11 rebounds, 4 assists. The 11 rebounds are huge, obviously. It's just the second straight game he's got 10 or more rebounds. He only had 6 of those last year. So big step there. Brooklyn played Ben Simmons at center. And the Magic put Wendell Carter on him. And of course, like, you don't have to worry so much about Ben Simmons shooting threes or shooting jumpers. You can play off him a little bit, but Wendell Carter was in a position he's not usually going to be in. He's not going to have to defend the perimeter very much with a guy who can attack downhill like Simmons. And Carter did an excellent job defensively. Like, again, just not head of the snake stuff, but he was so vital to setting the tone for the Magic defensively and saying, my man's not going to get by me. Your man's not getting by you either. And Brooklyn couldn't quite spread him out. He was still effective around the basket, but I really loved his defense. I thought it did set a very good tone and a very, very big tone for this team. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope had a good showing, 10 points, 3 for 7 shooting, 2 for 5 from 3. Just good to see him get the ball in the basket a little bit more. I think he's still getting comfortable with the Magic, with his teammates in the building. The shot's going to be there. I think all of us are confident that KCP is going to be an excellent shooter. Still gives you great defense. Still gives you a lot of really good plays. Shots coming, so an encouraging game for KCP. Jalen Suggs only played 21 and a half minutes and not played in the fourth quarter, so hopefully he'll be fresh to deal with John Morant on Saturday. 10 points, 3 for 6 shooting, 5 rebounds, 3 turnovers for Jalen Suggs. This was an interesting game for Jalen. And a big part of that was, in the second quarter especially, Dennis Schroeder really increased his ball pressure full court. And this is where I think the concerns about the Magic not having a true point guard really were evident. The Magic's offense stopped. They went on an 18-3 run, and then they gave up an 18-1 run or an 19-1 run, and then gave up an 18-3 run back from Brooklyn. And a lot of this happened because Schroeder was pressuring Suggs, and the Magic weren't initiating their offense quick enough. Like, because Suggs had to work to bring the ball up over the court, including an 8-second violation, the Magic's offense just lost some of its rhythm in the half court. And so this is, I can guarantee every team is going to watch tape of this game against Brooklyn and say, can we pick up Suggs full court? Can we slow him down to slow this offense down? And look, Memphis has Marcus Smart. Memphis will probably try and do the same thing. I'm sure they're watching this tape, and I'm sure that's part of their thought process, is to put Marcus Smart on Jalen Suggs, harass him, make it difficult for him to bring the ball up the floor. This is the risk the Magic carried when they didn't go after point guard. That showed itself here. And so I think this is something that we're going to have to monitor and see how the Magic work around. But Suggs was able to get some shots to go in, 10 points, 3 for 6 shooting. Again, just a weird game on that front. Anthony Black continues to really impress, though. 10 points, 5 assists, 4 for 7 shooting, made a 3, 3 rebounds. Like, AB really does a great job getting downhill. He's playing with a lot more confidence off the dribble, really making some nice passes. Just, he looks like a new player, looks like a better, improved player. And obviously that's huge for the Magic's bench. But Black looks really, really solid. And again, just everyone just kind of doing their part in this game. Again, it wasn't pretty, but the Magic's defense held firm. Big stat of the night, 19 turnovers for 25 points. Brooklyn, 19 turnovers. Orlando, 25 points off those turnovers. The Magic really used their defense to feed the offense. When they needed to lock in, they locked in. When they needed it, it was there. And that's the ultimate lesson of this game, and ultimately what the Magic found and discovered in this game, in this home opener against Brooklyn. It wasn't quite the clean and fun game we were hoping for. It was frustrating. Jamal Mosley even picked up a technical foul. It was an odd game. It was a disjointed game, but the Magic came out on top. The Magic did what they had to do, and at the end of the day, they all count the same. Chuck Daly used to always say, it's my favorite Chuck Daly quote, there's no such thing as an ugly win. This game was not pretty, but it's a win. And that's all that matters in the end. The Magic learned a lot about themselves, a lot still to clean up, a lot still to get better at, but they know that they can make this kind of effort and still win comfortably against a team like Brooklyn. They'll obviously have to continue to get better, and Memphis will be a much different challenge. The Magic defeat the Brooklyn Nets 116-101. Orlando's back in action Saturday against the Memphis Grizzlies. We'll see how the Magic look on a back-to-back and recap that game for you on our next episode of Locked On Magic. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the funny on the podcast to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You could, of course, find us on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, which will include my 3 takeaways from the game at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. As always, thank you for your support. And if you want even more Magic content, be sure to subscribe to the Locked On Magic Daily newsletter. It's the one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox Monday through Friday. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Magic newsletter. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. On our next episode, we'll recap the Magic's game against the Memphis Grizzlies. But until then, for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, it's been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.